Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And from that world, I'd like to offer another one of my comic book gems. But this particular gem is unique in certain ways. I know I say that about a lot of my comic book gems, but I feel it especially applies in this case. You see, there are plenty of great characters who can function well on their own, holding down entire plots, themes, and ongoing series for years. But for certain characters, it's legitimately hard for them to hold down their own solo comic series. And when most of their history is so closely aligned with a well-known franchise like the X-Men, they struggle to grow outside that particular narrative. And even when they do get their own solo series, it's often a gamble that rarely pays off. But Cyclops Starstruck, by Greg Rucka, Russell Dauterman, and Carmen Carnero, just happens to be one of those rare wins that pays off in all the right ways. And for a character not known for carrying his own solo series, no less. Now, as a longtime X-Men fan, I understand and even appreciate how closely Cyclops' story is tied to the X-Men. When most people think X-Men, he's often one of the first mutants they think of alongside Wolverine, Storm, and Charles Xavier. But unlike Wolverine, he's not some loner who often goes off on his own crazy adventures. Cyclops has always been more of a team player, a leader, and an avid adherent of Charles Xavier's dream. On top of that, he happens to be one of the most controversial characters in the history of X-Men. Just go to any X-Men related message board or subreddit. He is likely to generate all sorts of debate, good and bad alike. Some fans love him, some fans hate him, but everyone has a strong opinion, it seems. I'm certainly no exception. I don't deny that he is one of my favorite characters, and I have participated in some of those heated debates. But for this particular comic book gem, we can effectively table those debates. Because in many ways, this story is a reprieve of all the things that usually make Cyclops so controversial. For context, this particular series emerged out of the all-new X-Men era that was spearheaded by Brian Michael Bendis. To say this was a chaotic time for the X-Men would be a gross understatement, both for the character and for the fans. It all stemmed from a fateful decision by Beast to use Dr. Doom's time machine to bring the original 5 X-Men to the future, in which they learned just how messy their lives got. Young Cyclops was hit especially hard, seeing his older self become so radicalized and extreme. Now, there's a lot I could say about how his character was handled during this era, both his original 5 version and his adult version, but that would only distract from what makes this book such a great gem. It spun directly out of the events of the trial of Jean Grey, during which young Cyclops learns that not only is his father still alive, he's a badass space pirate named Corsair, and the leader of the Starjammers. After so many painful revelations about his future, this is a nice change of pace. And after learning about this, young Scott decides to depart from the X-Men for a while to join his father, catching up on some quality father-son time while also getting a chance to be a badass space pirate himself. It is a significant departure from Cyclops' usual narrative, which is often so closely tied to the X-Men. But that doesn't stop this comic from being genuinely great, both for the character as well as his overall story. The story even makes a legitimate case that Cyclops would be a great space pirate in his own right. When the story begins, he's still adjusting to the revelation that his father is still alive and they're on a space adventure. Given that this is a young teenage version of Cyclops, who has yet to develop into the hardened X-Men we know and love, it's quite a bit to take in. But early on, he shows that he's handling it remarkably well for a teenager, even growing fond of his father's girlfriend, Hepzibah, who treats him like a stepson. At first, their adventures are fairly simple. Scott tags along with his dad while they hijack a Badoon spaceship. For background, that's basically the Marvel equivalent of the Power Rangers beating up on putties. It's not a complex plot, but it doesn't have to be. It just gives Corsair a chance to show his son how to be a good space pirate. At the very least, it beats the hell out of fishing trips. It also gives young Scott a chance to do something other than be the overly uptight leader of the X-Men. Because even as a teenager, that was often the crux of most of the stories involving him. Everyone else got to stray from the charted path, do their own thing, and get into a little trouble. But Cyclops, being the Boy Scout and the teacher's pet, never got to do much of that. It's a big reason why he's so easy to root against at times. But being a space pirate with his dad, it's a rare and remarkable opportunity. And it's a chance for Cyclops to do more than just lead teams, clash with Wolverine, and obsess over Jean Grey. And Rucka, Dowderman, and Canaro make the most of it. Once young Cyclops gets a feel for being a space pirate, he becomes quite adept at it. And as the story progresses, he ends up doing a lot more than hijacking renegade ships with his dad. One of the more dire parts of the story involves them getting shipwrecked on an alien planet, forcing them to rely on survival skills more so than pirating skills. But the story doesn't revolve entirely around action or spacefaring adventures. Granted, there's still plenty of that, but in between these plot points are some rare moments of introspection. Moments that, given the context of the series, were both overdue and cathartic. At one point, Scott and his father have a chance to talk seriously about what happened to his older self. It's one of the most revealing conversations that young Cyclops has had with anyone at this point in the all-new X-Men era. Because by now, he's had a chance to meet his older self. He's also had a chance to see what kind of future he's in for, and what sort of fateful decisions he makes along the way. It's something that many Cyclops fans and X-Men fans alike often note when forming their opinions about the character. And the way this time-displaced version makes sense of it all is a genuinely powerful moment. And Corsair plays a big part in helping craft that moment. Having not had a chance to be with his son during his formative years, this is an opportunity for him to offer some fatherly perspective. The way he sees it, Cyclops' older self lost hope over time, and in its place came an anger that consumed him, which ultimately informed his misguided decisions down the line. Now, not every X-Men fan may agree with that perspective, seeing adult Cyclops' flaw as a byproduct of rage winning out over hope, but it still resonates with young Cyclops, and it makes a compelling case for those who have been following his story to this point. Having hope in Xavier's dream, having hope in the future, and having hope in the people he loves, that's what brings out Cyclops' greatest strengths. But in the absence of that hope, anger often brings out his greatest flaws. Looking back on his history, from the original Phoenix saga to the X Factor years, to his time leading the Blue Team, to Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men, to the lead up to Avengers vs. X-Men, Scott Summers is driven heavily by hope, or lack thereof. Now, being displaced in time and separated from his friends, a younger, less jaded version of Scott Summers has a chance to recapture that sense of hope. And yes, be a badass space pirate with his dad. Now, I don't know if that counts as therapy, but I can safely say it does wonders for Cyclops' character. That sense of hope, as well as his newfound cunning as a space pirate, plays a critical role in how he and the Starjammers survive. Getting off an alien planet ends up being the easy part. Escaping the bounty hunters that track them down, that's a lot harder, and a lot messier. But in this case, it's young Cyclops who has to find a way. He has to use both his pirating skills and his X-Men skills to save his father and escape. I won't spoil all the details, I'll just say it makes for one of Cyclops' finest hours. He may still be a teenager in this story, but he carries himself with a swashbuckling swagger that would make any father, stepmother, or older self proud. If you are a Cyclops fan in any capacity, or even just a fan of space pirate adventures, Cyclops Starstruck fills every need. It firmly establishes that Cyclops can do more than just lead the X-Men, piss off Wolverine, and attract beautiful psychics. He can hold his own against a horde of ruthless bounty hunters, fight off a ship of marauding Badoon, and still have time for some much-needed self-reflection. During an era when Cyclops was such a controversial character, this comic gem gave us one of the most likable iterations of the character in years. I don't deny that a lot has changed since then with the X-Men comics. Cyclops isn't nearly as divisive as he used to be, relatively speaking. But even with all those changes, Cyclops Starstruck has held up remarkably well, acting as a reminder of just how great this character can be outside the X-Men. Even if you're not a fan of his and actively root for Wolverine at every turn, I urge you to give this gem a chance. It might not make everyone who reads it a Cyclops fan, but it will demonstrate why he's someone worth respecting. As I do with all my comic gems, I'll leave an Amazon link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more of my comic book gems. Until next time, take care and stay safe.